Hello, and thank you for watching this video. To jump right in, I'm going to briefly talk about the 3 different learning stations I have in my classroom before we jump down and look at the classroom from the ground level. So on the left-hand side, you will notice 3 large white tables. These do not have chairs around them because I want the students to be able to move around the table and collaborate with peers on group projects or science experiments. This area is mostly for group work. As you will see in the middle of the room, I have pod seating for 30 students. Within this pod seating, I have 3 different types of seats, but we will talk more about that later. This area is where students sit and either work quietly at their tables with their group mates or are paying attention to the instruction happening at the front of the room. All pods are angled so that students can see the front of the room without anyone's back being towards me. Now you may notice a thin white counter stretching from the top of the room down to the right-hand side, and I put that there for students who may want to stand up and work but may not necessarily want to work with the group tables with other people. So that is a brief overview of the different learning stations. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at the group tables. I wanted students to have the option of working on a table where they can stand up and move around. As noted by Jennifer Lodge, students spend up to 70% of their day sitting, which does not help academic performance. Movement stimulates the brain, and I wanted to give students the opportunity to move more when working. Now, looking at the brown sections on the wall, these are bulletin boards and will be used to showcase the students' work. Posters can also be placed on the wall in between the bulletin boards. Moving over here, there's a small whiteboard which can be used as a place to write down the daily schedule or to write down important reminders. Now, moving over here is the main whiteboard where most direct instruction will be done, and the smartboard could be placed in the middle. I decided to place a podium at the front of the room so that way I have some place to put my lesson plan and for students to use when presenting to the class. So moving over here, this is my desk. From this spot, I have a very good view of the entire classroom. Along this wall, you will notice that there are many bookshelves. I wanted to fill my classroom with as many resources as possible. This would be a space for textbooks to go, supplementary readings, and extra books for the students to read in their spare time once they're done their work. In front of the bookshelves is the individual work counter, and then in this corner is a place to store items. You may have noticed by this point that I like to have plants in the classroom, but non-flowering ones, of course, just to avoid the pollen and potential allergies. So you can see that the individual work counter is fairly long, and it can allow multiple students to stand and work on projects and assignments. Over here, I decided to put planters in front of the big windows for growing vegetables and fruit. I wanted students to see how food grows so that way they have an understanding of a plant life cycle and just how much effort goes into growing crops. This is important because many students have a limited understanding of where and how food comes from, and this makes it personal. Food that is grown can be given to students or used in food classes, so it has benefits beyond my classroom. I believe it's important for students to have a good grasp of the natural world and how it works, and no matter what subject I teach, I would love to fill my classroom with plants. Plants just brighten up the room and make it a more inviting learning space. Over here, I would love to put a fish tank up. Probably put a betta fish in it with some shrimp, snails, maybe some live plants. Classroom pets make the room a more engaging space, plus a fish tank would be a useful visual for science class, or perhaps an inspiration for art class. The fish tank can also be used to teach the nitrogen cycle and can teach students how to properly care for pets, or perhaps like a mini ecosystem, like a controlled ecosystem for a science unit. Betta fish are easy to care for, and I have owned them for years, which is why I chose this fish. This right here is a sink station for students to use to clean their hands, which will be useful since I would love to teach science and art, so a sink will be needed. Okay, so now let's take a look at the pod seating arrangement. I split it up into 3 sections, with the left and right side seating 3 students per pod, and the middle row seating 4 students per pod. The logic for this kept in mind the 3 different types of people, those being extroverts, ambiverts, and introverts. I figured that the extroverts would prefer the middle row more, as it is more interactive because the students face each other and there is 1 extra student for these pods, plus they're surrounded by the outer rows. I thought that the ambiverts would like the double seats in the outer rows, so that way they can still interact with their peers, but they would not have as much interaction as the middle rows. Then the introverts can sit at the single seats and not have to share a row with another student, but they would still be part of a pod and be able to collaborate and talk during group discussions. So overall, no matter where you sit in the classroom, even if it's the back row, you have a pretty good view of what's going on, whether that be extrovert, ambivert, or introvert seats. I don't know if I would call it that specifically in class, but the students would still have the option of sitting in a variety of different spaces. So let's take another brief look at the general overview of the classroom now that we've looked at all the individual aspects. Just to recap, there are 3 different learning stations, that being the group collaboration station on the left-hand side of the tables, the pod seating in the middle of the room, and the individual work counters along the back and right-hand sides of the room. So over here is more of an unlikely dream of mine. I don't think it would happen, but if so, I would love for this to come to fruition. And this is an outdoor chicken coop. This would be a space for students to learn about animal husbandry, the life cycle of a chicken. They'd be able to collect the eggs for themselves and just have an awesome learning experience taking care of chickens. I got the inspiration for this from a high school I was supposed to go to in Victoria before I moved, and they kept a chicken coop in their courtyard, and it was a certain program of students' job to take care of them, to feed them, collect the eggs, make sure they were watered, keep their pens clean, and it was just an incredible idea for a school to have and teaches students lots about animals and the life cycle. And this could be used even for younger grades too, because they'd probably like that. But yeah, that's that station. And over here, just right beside the chicken coop, I would love to have a native Alberta plant section. So I have a tree back in the corner. If it could be an apple tree, that'd be fantastic, because the apples could be used in food classes, and the grass could be kept lawn underneath the tree perhaps, so students can look at bugs and other little ecosystems under the tree. But beside the tree, I'd want 2 additional flower beds just on either side with plants that are native to Alberta that perhaps have a use that traditional First Nations people would have used, and just to give students an understanding of the plants that are around them, because plant blindness is a pretty big thing. And of course, I'd love if it could be just outside of the classroom windows so the students could look outside and just gain inspiration, be able to learn. That way we could go outside and check out the individual stations. So that is a brief overview of my dream outdoor station. I would love to have bees as well, but due to allergies, I don't think that would go down very well, including myself since I'm allergic to pollen. But yeah, so this is, once again, another overview of the classroom. I thank you for listening to this video and just my dreams and plans for future classrooms, including outdoor areas that may or may not happen, but would be cool if they did. So yeah, I had tons of fun designing this project, and it gave me lots of good ideas. It was fun. It was fun to research. It was fun to do. So thank you for watching and listening.